Welcome back, everyone, to today's Explainer. If you're a focused learner who absolutely loves seeing exactly how abstract, high-level concepts actually translate into the real world, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating document put together by Dr. P. Ratnakumar from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering over at KL University. He's mapped out an entire adaptive software engineering syllabus, specifically course outcomes 1 through 4. And he's overlaid it directly onto the living, breathing journey of a real industry software project. We're taking the whole trip today, from a completely raw client need all the way to long-term maintenance.
Okay, let's dive right into this because that's the ultimate question, isn't it? How does a rough, sometimes chaotic business idea actually transform into a secure, scalable, cloud-native application? You know, it isn't just about sitting in a dark room writing code in a vacuum. It's about a continuous life cycle. We're going to look at the exact stages a project goes through, really proving that these academic modules aren't just disconnected units you memorize for a test and then forget. No, they're a unified, powerful engine that actually drives modern tech.
So here's our roadmap for the journey. We'll start with the client's business problem, move into Agile planning and Scrum, hit DevOps and integration, tackle DevSecOps and the cloud, and wrap it all up with monitoring and continuous evolution.
Section 1. The client's business problem.
Before a single line of code is ever written, every successful project actually starts completely outside the syllabus. It starts out there in the real world with a client who is dealing with a painful, frustrating business problem. This is where a feasibility study comes in, to figure out if building software is even the right answer in the first place. Because, let's be real, you never want to spend months building a bridge that literally no one is ever going to cross. Dr. Kumar gives us some highly specific examples here. Say a client needs a specialized device purely to handle massive math operations, like multiplying 999,999 by 999. Or maybe a business is totally losing track of their dealer details simply because they lack digital storage. They might be flying blind with zero daily, weekly, or yearly analytics. Or maybe they're missing crucial product verification details right on their devices. Course Outcome 1, or CO1, steps in right here. It takes these ad hoc, everyday struggles and introduces disciplined software engineering foundations to convert that mess into a structured, working system.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the academic framework locks perfectly into the real world. CO1 handles the planning side through Agile and Scrum. CO2 tackles DevOps with CI, CD, and Docker. CO3, that's all about security operations and scanning. And finally, CO4 pushes us right into the future with MLOps, cloud deployment, and model training. It's just a complete end-to-end pipeline.
Section 2. Agile planning and Scrum.
Once we actually know the client's problem, we've got to gather those requirements and turn them into actionable user stories. Now, historically, the industry relied heavily on the waterfall process. And waterfall was incredibly rigid, heavily reliant on a mountain of upfront documentation, and frankly, it often resulted in discovering massive project-killing issues way too late in the game. But modern projects, they demand the Agile mindset. We choose Agile because client requirements inevitably change, right? We desperately need that early feedback. It is all about adaptable, iterative progress.
Let's look at how this Agile mindset builds into an actual day-to-day workflow. This is the Scrum framework. Scrum gives us very specific roles. You've got the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team. And they all operate on the steady heartbeat of 4 key repeating events. You kick off with sprint planning to figure out exactly what to tackle. You have daily stand-ups to keep everyone aligned. You wrap up with a sprint review to actually show off the new increment to the client. And finally, a sprint retrospective to figure out how the team can do it even better next time. To make all of that happen seamlessly, the team leverages specific tools and techniques. We're talking about platforms like Jira and Trello to manage both the product and sprint backlogs right on task boards. And to forecast when things will actually get done, teams use estimation techniques like assigning story points. They often use a surprisingly fun game called planning poker for this, and then they track their overall team velocity. This constant backlog grooming ensures that user stories, which capture the who, what, and why of any new feature, are totally ready to go when the next sprint rolls around.
Section 3. DevOps. Building and integrating. Okay, let's speed things up a bit, because we are entering the engine room now. This is where developers are writing code against that backlog within a tight sprint time box, using Git workflows to manage all those versions. But even more importantly, this is exactly where we establish the DevOps culture. We are tearing down that traditional, stubborn wall between development and operations. The goal? Making software releases frequent and low risk, instead of rare and totally terrifying. And a massive, massive part of that low-risk strategy is containerization. Tools like Docker let us package up an application so it behaves with absolute consistency. It literally does not matter if that code is running on a developer's local laptop, in a testing sandbox, or live out in production. The container ensures it runs exactly the same way, every single time.
That containerization is just one piece of the continuous integration, or CI pipeline. Think about this. Every single time a developer makes a Git commit, it automatically kicks off a build and a testing cycle. The real magic here is that these pipelines are entirely defined by YAML files. That's just a type of human-readable configuration file. It's all automated. Nobody is sitting at a desk manually compiling code anymore. The pipeline just does all the heavy lifting instantly.
Section 4. DevSecOps and Cloud Deployment. Now this brings up a pretty tense question. If we're building and integrating code at this blistering speed, how on earth do we keep it all secure? Well, the answer to that tension is a really vital concept called shifting left. In the old days, security was essentially an afterthought, just a quick panicked check right before launch day. But DevSecOps takes that entire security process and shifts it left on the project timeline. It builds security checks directly into that automated CI pipeline we just talked about. Basically, strict security gates have to be passed before anything is allowed to be released. And this absolutely matters to you because fixing a bug early on in development is incredibly cheap. But fixing a security breach once you're live in production, that can literally bankrupt a company.
The source document outlines a really impressive arsenal of tools used at these pre-release security gates. First up, you've got SonarQube handling static analysis. That means it's scanning the raw source code for bugs and code smells before the build even happens. Then there's OWASP Zap handling dynamic analysis, actively testing the running application for exploitable weaknesses. Trivy steps in next to scan those Docker containers and third-party dependencies for any known vulnerabilities. And, absolutely crucial here, secrets management ensures that no hard-coded passwords or credentials ever slip through the cracks, all while validating data handling against super strict compliance rules like GDPR. So, once the code survives those rigorous security gates, we hit the climax of this phase: continuous deployment. The validated builds are automatically released into the wild. Kubernetes steps onto the stage here for orchestration, handling the scaling, self-healing, and load balancing of all those containers. The source notes that AWS and GCP free tiers are fantastic for getting real-world cloud hosting exposure. And if we're dealing with machine learning, Course Outcome 4 teaches us how to extend these pipelines to actually train and deploy ML artifacts using heavy hitters like AWS SageMaker, Azure ML Studio, or Google's Vertex AI.
Section 5. Monitoring and Continuous Evolution. Let's settle the pace for a second, because hitting that deploy button, that is not the end of the story. In fact, it's really just the beginning of a long-term maintenance and monitoring loop. Once your application is live, you desperately need application observability. You have to keep a steady pulse on the system. Tools like Prometheus are used to collect vital system metrics, while Grafana provides these gorgeous visual dashboards. This means the engineering team can literally see the health, the latency, and the error rates of the application in real time. But if your software includes machine learning, which CO3 and CO4 fully prepare us for, monitoring gets quite a bit more complex. You aren't just watching for server crashes anymore, you are actively tracking deployed models for accuracy drift and performance decay. You have to monitor those live predictions to make absolutely sure the model isn't starting to act on skewed or biased data. And just like we use Git for our software code, the machine learning world uses DVC to track data versions and MLflow to keep tabs on model versions and experiment histories. Think of it as the ML equivalent of code patching. These models have to be continuously retrained, and those security scans have to be repeated for as long as the system is alive.
So, the crucial point is this: the entire process we just walked through is a continuous, never-ending loop. We started out with a raw client need, we moved through agile planning, development, CI/CD, DevSecOps, cloud deployment, and finally into live monitoring. And when we monitor, what actually happens? Well, we find new bugs. The client requests new cool enhancements. And those newly discovered defects and feature requests, they become fresh user stories, looping right back around into the Scrum backlog to kick off the cycle all over again. Dr. Kumar's mapping brilliantly proves that these course outcomes are not just isolated academic islands, they are the literal heartbeat of professional software engineering. Which leaves us with this final provocative thought. If software is never truly finished, but rather constantly evolving through this infinite life cycle, what will your next sprint look like in the continuous loop? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.